Okay, welcome back to the Investigative Journal on this January 12th, 2016 day on our calendar. I'm your host, Greg Anthony. You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com. You can listen to my show if you so choose from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. That's on FirstAmendmentRadio.com, Monday through Friday. My guest today is Leo Zagami from Rome, and we've had Leo on a couple times during the holidays and one time before the holidays, and this is our first show in January. The last show we did, we talked about Leo Zagami. He was the head of the P2 Masonic Lodge, an insider that Leo explained quite well of his role in with the Vatican, with the Mafia, the whole story. And after that, there was a meeting regarding Leo Zagami's death and what was going on, basically in the Masonic lodges, etc., etc. And Leo went to that meeting. I think it was on the 20. When was that, Leo?
It was on the 22, but it wasn't about what the lodges would say. No, he left a proper written testament deposited at the state archives in Pistoia, nominating his successor.
Yes.
So this nomination was made on the 22nd to both a Masonic audience, and also there was members of the press that were invited there. There is a couple of videos you can maybe find on some Italian news sites, and we can say that it was, I think, an historically important moment, because of the legacy that this man had, and that in the end of his life he surprised everybody, not nominating an Italian, and also changing completely his environment, Masonically speaking, by becoming deputy, honorary Grand Master of Disobedience in Romania, and then also 33 degree of this Supreme Council in Romania. He decided in the end that the most suitable subject was this general, this 4-star NATO general called Bartolomeo Savoio, that has also a French passport, as well. He's 2 times Légion d'honneur, and he has had a great Masonic experience, but he's not the character a lot of people will have imagined as a successor of Gelli, and also a lot of people will have not imagined that this Gelli as well had already decided, even before he died, that amongst his successors there would be basically all members of the Ordo Illuminatorum Universalis, of my order, because as well as the general, also the Grand Inspector General Mariano Iodice went and picked up this written testimony from Gelli in last year, was also is a member of my order, and meaning my order, I mean the remains of what I brought out, as you know, many years ago after my departure from the Monte Carlo Lodge. I had a further row with them in 2008. About my revelations, which, as you know, we did together, me and you, for a long time. And this meant that I brought my order elsewhere. I brought it back in Italy, and then I rebuilt it in Florence in the last couple of years, earlier in Pomezia. But we made a good job in not implicating ourselves with anything that we didn't regard as correct, as transparent. And I kept on condemning those members of the Monte Carlo Lodge, including Ezio Giunchiglia. And I tell you, there were none of the P2 members of the Monte Carlo Lodge members at Gelli's funeral. And there were very few people even at the ostentation of his body the day before in Arezzo. It was kind of incredible also that a lot of these people, that took advantage of him during his life, they didn't really then follow him, at least pay their own respects, as each one of them, including Berlusconi, as you know, were part of the P2. Mm-hmm. So it is like, on one way it was sad, and another way we were happy to be there, and that he changed in the last 7 years of his life, since the last scandal that he was involved in 2008-9 with this Stefano De Carolis, this Grand Master who was involved with the Jesuits. and with this Jesuit called Ferruccio Romanin. After this scandal that saw the Jesuits and Licio Gelli involved, but Licio was not really involved, but they went to him, the investigators, and he, at that point, he understood that these people were really not people he wanted to have anything to do anymore in the late part of his life. I mean, it's always better later than never. We can say that in the last 7 years of his life, Gelli had this transformation to somebody that broke with his past. And because of the fact that he broke with his past himself, who was the great manipulator, as you know very well, Greg, during the strategy of tension, I think that's why the elite paid him back, but by having only imagined that his body was put in the afternoon in Arezzo, the day before the funeral in Pistoia, and in Arezzo maybe 10 people came in the whole day, 10 or 15 people max, the whole day.
Wow.
The body was. And then on the day of the funeral, there was like 150 people in the church. That's it. And most of the people there were actually members of my order, who actually seemed to be closer to the widow and to the family. There was actually the son and the other relatives didn't really even. It was quite conflictual, I think, this decision of Gelli in the last few years to break with the certain people in his past. Otherwise, he could have ended up, with a great kind of, ceremony, state ceremony, whatever, with hundreds of people. But it wasn't like that. It was really awkward, the whole thing. In any case, he surprised everybody by leaving a written testament. So, because, of course, you know that the Monte Carlo Lodge was really probably amongst the P2 setup, the most evil part of the setup, for one reason. We talked about it in the past. Today is convenient to mention it again. The Monte Carlo Lodge was the weapon dealer's place, okay? The place where the armed side of the P2 was more present. And instead, Gelli's function was into the propaganda and strategy of propaganda, basically, psyops. That was his specialty. So the clash that these two factions had at one point became very strong. And I think that today, as I have made my choice 10 years ago, and I stand by the choice I made 10 years ago to walk out to people like Balestrieri, who's now in prison, like we said in the past episodes, people like Rui Gabir or another person like this Roberto. But the problem now, Greg, starts the moment in which he has nominated, of course, this general. Of course,
and that what this meeting was about, correct? When you went to that meeting,
Yes, this was the general was there. He read the written testament of Gelli, and only 2 lodges in Italy knew about this. And these 2 lodges were basically, one of them was my lodge that was actually ratified last June as Antonio De Curtis 33, and the other one was a lodge of another member of the Ordo Illuminator Universalis. So basically, after all this criticism that we moved against Gelli, against his whole system, it's like kind of God paid us back by basically giving us in our hands his legacy when it comes down to now be able to not only access certain secrets, but also to maintain now a brand new form of control over Italian Freemasonry, making sure that they will never be corrupt as it was back in those days. It was corrupt. Gelli knew perfectly that the form of Freemasonry that he practiced back in the days wasn't regular and was completely criminal at times. But it wasn't a criminality that was perceived as such by the institution, because when is the actual American government giving you $10 million a month, no? And when is the Italian government working with you, you are not a criminal. It's the governments who are the criminals. So I think that this conference was very interesting because what I saw and I noticed from the various Masons who talked during the conference, I was also one of them after with the press later on. And something strange really happened even there. I gave 2 interviews, and these interviews were erased from the camera.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning that the cameraman and the people, went back home and couldn't find this material anymore. It was like they had gone inside these cameras that nowadays have all Bluetooth connections, so you can hack on them very easily. But you need to have some very particular form of technology. So I guess that the whole place was rigged, the whole setup where we met in Arezzo. It was this...
when you say rigged, what do you mean? What do you think was behind all of this?
Intelligence services were present probably of more than one country for the whole event. I mean, we're talking here of an event that was issued.
We lost you there.
And basically, the people that came there, they were very high-level Masons. There were some very high-level Masons. And at the same time, though, it was really very few and not really the ones you would expect to come there. As I said, there were no members of the Monte Carlo Lodge, of the P2, no members of that kind of environment, really. If not, probably the very owner of the place, maybe, or his brother used to be members back in the days. But very interestingly enough, it seemed like there is an open war against Renzi in this moment, because you see, there has been a big bankruptcy the last couple of months. One of the main banks of Arezzo has gone bankrupt last month, so people they lost their money from one day to the other. This has been very big scandal regarding Renzi and his government also. And this whole bank used to be in the hands of the P2 and then went into the hands of the Opus Dei. And in the hands of the Opus Dei, things got much worse, because while things before were kind of managed by Gelli and his Masons in a very methodical way, maybe, on the verge of criminal, but very methodical, and in making sure that nobody get to steal the money of the people who actually have their money in the bank, these ones of the Opus Dei, what they did seems to be even worse. I mean, they picked up from where the P2 left, and they went one step further, sending the money of the bank to people like Cardinal Bertone so he could buy yachts or furnish his penthouse.
Leo, if we could I just want to ask a question and get your answer on this, because I want to get back to the... Can you hear me now?
Badly, yes, very badly. I very fractured the signal of your voice.
Okay.
Can you try again?
How is it now? Is it better?
Very bad.
Okay. Well,
try to call me again?
Yeah. Why don't you continue with what you were saying?
You want me to can you hear me well on your side?
Yes.
Okay. So where do you want me to pick up from?
Right where you left off.
Okay, so as I said, the moment in which the last couple of years, Gelli was very critical of Matteo Renzi, this newly installed prime minister, who was really never elected by the Italians and came into power. But initially it was Gelli himself who really helped Renzi and his whole environment where Matteo Renzi grew up, which was the Leopolda, to actually start these new children on the block of Italian politics that in reality are manipulated by the usual puppet masters. One of them being Carlo De Benedetti, who in turn...
Okay, we're back on the Investigative Journal, and I apologize. We had some internet problems. We're connecting all the way from Italy, and some strange things happen. I usually have a good connection. But anyway, Leo, we've had this happen before, and we'll get this done one way or the other. One thing, you were talking about a lot of particulars, and sometimes that confuses my listeners here in America. Can you explain, it's not simply black and white. the Illuminati, who's good, who's bad. We know all roads lead to Rome,
Yeah.
and Rome is basically behind the New World Order, etc., etc.
Well, that's one of the reasons, Greg, why lately I have published in America 2 books. One is Pope Francis, The Last Pope, ? That brings us right in the topic you were just talking about the papacy and involvement of the Vatican with the New World Order. And the other one is the latest Confessions, Volume 1, Confessions of an Illuminati, Volume 1, which shows you the whole structure in detail, because of course the complexity of the subject at times it's confusing for the listener.
Right.
And that's why I invite people to maybe do further research thanks to a good reading, which at times is propedeutic for a much more wide kind of knowledge, and knowing all this in one go is impossible, but gradually I think one step after the other we can manage to introduce people. We have done this 10 years ago,
I know.
being really pioneers, especially in a moment in which very few people were talking about the Vatican-led New World Order. Now it seems to be right in their face. A lot of people have realized this, even people that didn't realize this until yesterday. But I think that at this point we really need to have a sort of academic approach for some that will eventually give also more credibility to the criticism that we are moving at this level. So I think that this way probably, of course, we need to make it a bit more easy for our listeners. So if we have to be very condensed about it, I would say Licio Gelli, we talked about it in the last episode, and I hope that most of you have listened to the last episode we did here on First Amendment with Greg, because I think it's very instructive to have let's say a whole bio of the figure, no? Because it's a very complex figure. So, and like you said, also is not everything is not either black or white, but it has many moments of gray, and this, which is not many shades of gray, but many moments of a very different thing.
Yeah, and I guess what I'm doing, Leo, is calling upon you to kind of sort this out, because you have an inside look at this, and maybe kind of explain how this all works together for the good and for the bad, and maybe people will understand that, it isn't just as simple as saying, for example, when you said you were part of the Masonic Lodge, most people said, oh, he must be on the bad side. And then when people say, I interview people like you, then I'm on the bad side. It's not quite that easy to say that, is it?
Yeah, unfortunately, this happens all the time, Greg. I mean, the other day I was on Coast to Coast AM with Jimmy Church, and even then Jimmy said people then associate me and accuse me of being a Mason. I mean, of course, it's very easy for people to accuse then the journalist, the interviewer, to be, in some kind of courts with the guy who's interviewed. But I will stress people to know that here what we're doing is a work of investigative journalism on which Greg is putting himself forward in a very difficult task of trying to grasp information from a world which is usually unreachable by most people, because it's a very closed world, because it's a top secret world. And I have with you said over, we have talked about a lot of things that are only coming into fruition right now, and finally people realize now that these things are happening. They need to act, they need to actually become aware of them. So, of course, we need to maybe start from the basis. The basis is that Licio Gelli was the worshipper master of a lodge called P2, that in the years of the Cold War, this lodge was judged as strategically important by the CIA. In order to do then work with it, they of course finance it, they implement the financing, and the P2 was also at the same time working with the whole Gladio apparatus Stay Behind, which maybe most listeners who don't know what is Stay Behind Gladio, we can just say these are the this invisible army that was supposed to oppose at any moment communism. Now, because Gelli now has died, a whole era, the Cold War, has gone with him, which is the first Cold War. Of course, now we are in the second Cold War, as you know, again with Russia. But things are very different from how they used to be. And even the approach of certain institutions and the relationship with the public has to change, because people like me who came out in the open and denounced these things made it very difficult for them to actually hide. So at that point, when you can't hide, you have to come to some compromise. And also, at times, my criticism was then received by the actual person who was criticized, like me and you. How many times me and you criticized Licio Gelli 10 years ago?
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, many did whole shows about this whole conspiracy, which was true, is true. I mean, he was working with the U.S. government, with the Jesuits, with this whole show, and also with the Mossad, because the Jewish Zionists and the Mossad, they were also involved. I mean, there was also a book made by a top Mossad spy that talked about Licio Gelli and how they worked with him. All bets on the fact that we were opposing, at least here on the West, communism, because that was the whole theater of the Cold War. Now, this whole theater has ended, that play at least has ended, but the theater continues with the new play, which is Islamic fundamentalism. And of course, the actors of this play may have changed. So the decision of Gelli to give to this successor, this Romanian general, wanted to be very indicative at the end of his career to show actually who were his puppet masters. Mm-hmm. To show to the people, listen, I am not just Licio Gelli the crook. I am Licio Gelli the general. Mm-hmm. And I was a general in the Secret Service, and my successor is a 4-star general recognized by NATO and operating now. He can't be a crook. He is one of the division's head of this system. I think this is very important, Greg, this decision he made, and also the fact that he only acknowledged very few people. Among these few people, my order, which is, at the end of the day, my order in the last 10 years has been growing, I must say, especially in the last few years, since here in Italy, my publications have grown in popularity. And of course, I have a lot of now Masons and Knights and people who actually follow my example and give me information all the time, so we can actually fight this war with the dark side within the system. It is, of course, an approach which is very criticizable from outside when you don't know what's happening. You understand, Greg? So when they criticize you or they criticize any other journalist who tries to approach Leo Zagami, Leo Zagami becomes very difficult for the average Joe who doesn't have really an understanding of this inside the world, which sometimes is made out of compromises simply because you simply can't go above that level. Otherwise, you end up without a system. Because when Gelli is putting as his successor a 4-star general, demonstrating who is behind, what is a 4-star general of NATO? NATO is the system.
Exactly. Leo, could you do me a favor? Hold that thought, because we're going to take a break, come back. We got another half hour to talk. But I just want to we got about 20 seconds here. I just want to say we're interviewing Leo Zagami from Rome. I apologize for a few of the internet connections. We got a good one right now, so we're going to keep that going for the next half hour. And we've got a lot of good stuff coming next half hour with Leo Zagami. So stick with us. We'll be back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy, in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the left behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
Okay, we are back for the second half hour of the Investigative Journal. Catch my show every evening, 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. That's on FirstAmendmentRadio.com. And you're going to get a lot of interviews like this. I first interviewed Leo almost 10 years ago, and as you know, I was in Rome during that period of time when terrorism was being sponsored by the CIA through the Masonic lodges with the expertise of the Vatican and Jesuit order. And I might add, if you go back to a story on May 26, 1982, in UPI, you'll see that I was almost a victim of one of their terrorist attacks on the American newspaper when Reagan was coming. So I'm no stranger to this. But it really did change my life. It made me research it even more because I was about 3 seconds away from meeting my maker. And for some reason, I'm still here. And I started researching this. And Leo, back in the 80s, I found out that the CIA had control of the American newspaper financially. I also found out that they worked together with Marcinkus and the Vatican Bank, working together with the P2 Lodge and all these Vatican priests that were involved. And this was a huge Vatican scandal, but they were sponsoring terrorism almost in the same manner they're doing it today with ISIS. How are they playing this game with ISIS, all these players I just mentioned? Because I think the Vatican has a big stake in this as well. Go ahead.
Well, of course, things have changed. They moved from a local level because Italy was one of those territories where the strategy of tension was basically experimented. You saw it yourself. There were people like Michael Leiden running around, and Michael Leiden is still in charge of a lot, we can say. He's still a key figure, and not the best of figures, unfortunately. And then we have, of course, ISIS as a creation of the military-industrial complex most influential transnational lodge, which is said to be called Ator Pentalpha. And this Ator Pentalpha, with people like Dick Cheney, George Bush Sr., and also George W. Bush, I mean, they have basically instituted a system since the end of the 70s, and then when they started the Ator Pentalpha Lodge, just started really near 9/11. That was the period in which they really took off with this whole apocalyptic plan. First with Al-Qaeda, the first brand, a bit like you have two brands, you have the Pepsi, but now with the ISIS, they're really going to this Armageddon-style scenario. And the latest news is that now, and this is a Jesuit, of course, maneuver, which I'm sure you will find quite fascinating, Greg, is that the Holy Mary, in one of the revelations in this place in Brazil, where she appears 3 times a week in a place called Pedro Regis, well, she's prophesying that Rome will be indeed attacked on the 23rd of March 2016, and that the Holy Mary even indicates the road in which the al-Baghdadi army might come in, from what is the interpretation of this prophecy, the Via Appia. I'm sure you know the Via Appia.
Yes.
So we can say really that not only you have prophecies of all kinds coming in from various other religions, but definitely the Catholic one with their own Holy Marys, and of course we have to see if the Vatican will accept or not this prophecy. I'm sure they will not, but it's very indicating that this prophecy is coming out of Brazil. As you know, the Jesuits are very, very powerful in South America, and in Brazil they have one of their key states. As you know, that's why also we have in Argentina, we have had a Jesuit Pope from Argentina, from South America. So the Jesuits always regard these prophecies that come out of South America usually very seriously. Then you sent
prophecy. Well, before you get to that one, you sent me an article that was written in Italian regarding this prophecy. So this is right happening today, correct?
This is happening right now. Rome is, of course, the number one target for terrorists, and is the number one target for ISIS, especially ISIS, because ISIS has a prophecy connected to the destruction of Rome. So the moment in which they will attack Rome significantly, that is the time in which then they think the Messiah will reveal himself and then side with them. So that is why they are following up this whole scenario. So they're very different also as an approach from Al-Qaeda. Let's say that this evolution into ISIS is the last tool of the New World Order to implement later on their one-world religion, which in the case of here also the Christian Catholic religion is starting to look more and more like Islam, because in some parts of Italy they have prohibited to put the presepe, the actual, this tradition they had in Italy to put the holy baby with the Joseph and Mary and the cow and the
sure.
thing, how you call it in English, the presepe,
the manger scene. Correct.
Yes, it's this little scene that they keep on until the day of the Befana on the 6th of January, which they celebrate here in Italy. And so they have prohibited the cross in schools. They have even prohibited now visits of some schools to religious places for this reason. This is a big change for the Italian culture, you understand?
Right.
The Italian culture is Catholic, it's always been Christian. And suddenly the mondialist, this whole Calergi plan is making us have this increased immigration. And the Pope only yesterday added that we have to accept more immigrants and we have to be nice with them, when we know very well that this is the contrary of what these people are doing, raping, murdering, doing whatever they want. Because we saw in the last few days the scandals that are erupting from Köln to Helsinki to Sweden, and of course here in Italy, in the south of Italy, they don't do this kind of things because the mafia protects the women. Because of course, if an immigrant actually did do this in Sicily with two old people, raping even the old woman who she was 70 and throwing them off the balcony. But the mafia, of course, after will kill the immigrant and be as gruesome as you can imagine, because mafia is very, very gruesome, very hardcore, you know. Mm-hmm. So actually, the mafia at the moment is functioning as the best protection Italy has. Otherwise, we will end up like Germany.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. I never thought they'd take the cross out of Italian schools. You know, you see all the parade. You know, they have all these festivals.
And you know who was the guy who actually tried to save the cross in the Italian school and made a whole crusade about it? Let's see if you can get to the guy.
I can't remember right now, but I'll look it up.
But no. I wanted to just imagine who could it be. It was actually Licio Gelli 5 years ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he fought a whole war about it.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And unfortunately, he lost because nowadays P2 was destroyed by the mondialist transnational lodges and paramasonic structures like the Bilderberg Club and all the rest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
interesting.
while in the 70s and 80s, when the world wasn't really globalized, so even the Masonic and paramasonic structures that rule it were not as globalized. So you had the P2 as basically Italian phenomena with some transnational units in Argentina, with some things in Monte Carlo, with some things here and there, but not a real transnational structure. Nowadays, these transnational lodges, they are very well structured worldwide, and they operate just as the Bilderberg Club in various territories and have members all over the place, and they are global, and they act beyond any law, because, nobody is criticizing the Bilderberg members, even the ones that took power after Berlusconi, because Berlusconi was removed, and then the first one to come in was a member of the Bilderberg Directorate, who was Mario Monti, who is also a member of the Trilateral Commission. And it's very significant that there was a guy a few years ago that was involved with the P2, and he called the Trilateral Commission a terrorist organization.
Yeah.
And he actually said that during the Bologna trial for the terrorist attack in Bologna. You remember the station?
Right, correct. Yeah.
Actually saying that the real people responsible were not the P2. They might have been, the ones in charge of finding the units that could make this possible through various intelligence operations. But the ones who actually gave the orders were the Trilateral Commission.
Exactly. Well, you were going to tell us about that second prophecy. Go ahead.
Second prophecy is 2017 instead. The second prophecy is to do with the Holy Mary of Fatima, with the revelations that were made there in Fatima 100 years ago. And right at the anniversary of the revelations of the Fatima revelations, there will be for Ali Akçaa, who was the guy who tried to kill John Paul II, there will be an attack in St. Peter's. So basically the same kind of attack that the Holy Mary is prophesying for this year in Brazil. Instead, the Shiite Muslims, because this prophecy comes from the Shiite Muslims, that they seem to be actually want to be involved themselves into materializing this prophecy. And so an attack that coincides with the fact that, you see, the Three Secrets of Fatima, these young Portuguese shepherds and the whole thing, is connected to a name, Fatima, which is actually a Muslim name. Okay?
Right.
So there is a link here between Islam and Christianity, which will be played out on the 13th of May 1917 with this terrorist attack.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because Fatima, that was the daughter of Muhammad, I believe.
Yes.
Right.
So but they want to celebrate this, the starting of the apparition, which was the 13th of May 1917. 100 years later, attack the Vatican on this specific day. But as I said, this is a different prophecy from the one instead, which is more immediate.
Okay, our connection dropped. So Leo was talking about this connection between Islam and the Vatican and these two prophecies. Leo, if I could ask you a question. Oh, jeez. Okay, like I said, if I could ask you a question, Leo, what do you think this world's going to look like in 20 years? I know that's a difficult one, but people always wonder what it'll look like 20 years from now.
Yeah. I partly respond to some of these questions in my new book, which will be coming out in America in June, which is volume 2, in which I also show some incredible new documentations and things regarding these moments and critical times we're living in, which is very interesting also for the readers. If I had to say how it's going to look, of course, Europe will not be anymore the way it is nowadays, but the whole world will not be as it is nowadays, because security will not be guaranteed in the whole state, meaning that security will become a private affair.
Mm-hmm.
Once the state collapses, as like a state, a government collapses, this concept collapses because people will visibly see that these governments are just puppets of the lobbies and the corporates, then the next stage will be to actually eliminate the governments, because there is no need for the show once the show is being unveiled to be complete farce.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
You understand? So because we are increasingly going towards that direction, the following step is basically with the private corporations, giving their own security, so with mercenary units and stuff. This means that definitely the one world order they want to implement wants to be implemented as soon as possible, while they still retain this kind of critical mass, which I don't think they will be able to keep for much longer after the whole show becomes really, active with wars, with natural disasters and everything. We're going towards definitely an end of this civilization as we see it now. And I see for 2020 onwards an increasing conflict even amongst the players of the New World Order, because of course they're all playing together. At the moment they're all helping each other. When there is a problem in China, North Korea steps in and gives a hand with a little bit of strategy of tension. When there is a problem with that, another one steps in and gives a hand. And 10 people die in Istanbul today, or the other. I mean, nowadays the system at a worldwide level is very balanced, but still it's I think going towards an unbalance, because there is some players like Russia who don't accept the dictatum, the one world solution given only by the leading state, which is the US, that wants to play the sheriff of the New World Order all the time. There is definitely this kind of scenario, but at the same time we know that they are making money and they want to eliminate part of the population once they don't need it anymore. Once they automate the functions of the system to a level in which a human is not required anymore because you have robots, they will eliminate humans, that's for sure. And we're going towards the elimination of 3/4 of humanity once that humanity is not required as being necessary anymore by the people who are controlling the system.
Italy and America are countries close to you. You've been here before. You speak in America all the time. What do you see for Italy and America?
I think that Europe is completely doomed in the next 4 years because of the decisions that have been made and of the farce that is being put on. What they want to do in the next 10 years is to destroy the sovereignty of each state to then move in and create continental states. Continental states meaning that the US itself will not be anymore a group of many states, but it will fundamentally be a continental state that will include also Mexico, Canada. The moment in which they install a one-world government, there will be a division of continent states. That is the new thing, and it's not me saying it, but actually is an important member of the ex-president of Italy, Giorgio Napolitano, that at the time of the Aldo Moro, as you know, he was, I think, interior minister or something like that. You remember
Right.
Giorgio Napolitano? He was already a big politician back in those days. He was from the Communist Party. And then he became Italian president. He then resigned just a year and a half ago. And he gave the speech not so long ago, like probably 6 months ago, in a famous Italian university, where he said we're going towards the continental states.
Oh, interesting.
So, meaning that the sovereignty of each state has to be given up. So there will be no more California, there will be no more Canada, or there will be no more Michigan. There will be no more states. There will be continent. That's the America continent, boom, of the New World Order, as a province of the New World Order. Eurasia, or this, there will be a division that will be very different from now. You understand? This is where they're moving towards, basically an implementation of power under less people that can exercise the democracy, because at that point, what kind of democracy can you expect from a continental state? None.
Exactly.
There will be none. There will be no people voting. Well, you want to vote in a continental states, people that think in a different way from the other and have a completely different. It will be simply for them the opportunity of. It's very Orwellian. I mean, how was the world divided in 1984?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, we're talking here about different, but basically just continents divided in different sections, the power, but not. So this is how I see it. I hope that I was clear in my view.
You know, you wanted to talk about Turkey and Istanbul.
Yes,
Go ahead.
Yes. Well, like I wrote in volume 1 of my Confessions, I dedicated, you see, the whole last part of my volume 1, which is going actually very well, I must say, nowadays all to Turkey as a triggering point for the future Armageddon. And Turkey has also this important, because they were the ones that believed in the caliphate. They had the Ottoman Empire. So they are the ones who are pushing ISIS and backing ISIS all the way, even if ISIS is a creation of the US together with the Emirates and also backup from Israel, but because it's part of the Wahhabi way of opposing the Shiite, I can say that Turkey is moving very dangerously in this game, because we saw that Russia actually managed to prove very clearly that they are involved in sending weapons to ISIS, in basically backing ISIS through getting people. If you are a recruit with ISIS, you pass through Turkey. That's how it works, you know. So, I mean, without Turkey's support, ISIS will close down. Without the doctors, even the doctors that that Turkey sends into ISIS territories, there will be no possibility for those ISIS people to survive, because they are in desperate shortage of doctors. But Turkey sends doctors to ISIS. So I mean, Turkey is very dangerous, because what happened is that in the last 5 years, things have changed very much. You remember when we used to talk, Ratzinger had gone to Turkey, and we started also talking about Fethullah Gulen, who was who made also a book with a preface by Thomas Michel from the Jesuits, and was very involved with the Jesuits. And Fethullah Gulen has this immense group, this Nur group, this sect that control basically Turkey together with Erdogan, and even put their own president when Erdogan was the prime minister. At one point, though, Erdogan, there was a journalist who made a book published. This book was, of course, taken out of commerce immediately and he was arrested. But the book actually demonstrated that there was a conspiracy by the Gulen movement, which is, of course, together with the Jesuits, to take over the Erdogan government. So at that point, Erdogan works together with Hillary Clinton and Bill. And this is not my own say. This is proven facts. You can go and read it and find it out on the internet. Some of the financing for Hillary and for Bill Clinton comes now even for Hillary from these Turkish wealthy individuals that are with the Jesuits and with Fethullah Gulen. This whole thing, you see, of the Jesuits and Turkey broke up the moment in which Erdogan also went in conflict with them. But Erdogan is a very strong player himself. And so, of course, this conflict within Turkey that sees the opposing factions, the more conservative faction with Erdogan, that of course wants to oppose this Islamic escalation. Because we have to remind people that Turkey used to be a state, and it still is in theory, where religion is not connected to the state in a complete, in a way like it is in other Muslim states. It's a like state. It's a state which the founder, Ataturk, who was a Freemason, wanted to give an independence from religious thought and wanted to be the most developed and most modern of the states. Okay? Mm-hmm. And now they are under threat. And they are under threat because both with Gulen and both also with Erdogan's support to ISIS, because the thing is, ISIS wants the caliphate.
Exactly. Leo, hold the thought right there. We're all out of time, okay? But remember where we're at. We're going to come back in a week or so and talk again, okay?
Take care, Greg. All the best to you and your listeners.
Okay, thank you. That was Leo Zagami. We'll see you tomorrow on the Investigative Journal.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity, invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.